we have to wipe some tears away. This is really a beautiful story of resilience and fighting. Unfortunately, Jess passed away earlier this year after several years that she got to spend with her family. But tonight we want to talk about her resilience, celebrate her legacy, and the beautiful film that we have here. So we're going to focus our questions on the film and the filmmaking and the impact that it can have in the world. So I'm going to start with a couple of questions myself, and then we will open it up to the audience. First, I wanted to just ask, how did you first meet Jess, Pedro, and her family, and how did you decide to make a film about her and her story?
Yeah, I was getting interested. I'm an MMA fan, and I was really interested in Ronda Rousey kind of having this rise in fame when Dana White said women weren't going to ever fight in the UFC. And I thought about all the women and girls who train so hard at these combat sports and how they often don't get taken as seriously. And that was in my head, and I was on social media, and I saw a little girl being held up with a belt. That was Jess with her coach, Dawn. And I thought, this kid is awesome. I want to know more about her, but I obviously want to make sure that, you know, this isn't like a helicopter dad, like pushing this on his daughter. And so I sent an email to the woman who wrote the article, who then put me in touch with Pedro, who then didn't respond for like 5 months, and then wrote to me and was like, okay, like I thought about it, and like, I like your work, and okay. And I was kind of like, well, let's just like meet and have a conversation. And so we met at a gym in New York City, and when I got there, Jess was like doing bag work and push-ups and being like, Poppy, what set is that? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This little girl is driving this show, and her dad is along for the ride. And I loved that. And then we made a short film called Girl Boxer, which was a New York Times op doc. And that was when she was 10. And I just like loved them so much, and she kept being like, well, I'm going to the Olympics, and I was like, I believe you. Like, what if we actually follow you? Is that something you'd be interested in? And Pedro took a little more convincing, because I told him I wasn't going to make it if he wasn't on board, because I think it's like kind of weird to just have a kid without a parent present. And so eventually he said yes, and that was the start of our film. So that was what we planned. And then when she got sick, I was a mess, Pedro was a mess, and Jess asked when we were going to film again, and we had a conversation, and I said, this is about you going to the Olympics. Obviously that has changed. Like, why do you want to keep filming? What do you want to say? And that is kind of what you see in the last, 20 to 30 minutes. So without her, we probably wouldn't have made this. Do you have anything to add?
Especially in those last 30 minutes, we hear a lot of words of wisdom from her about resilience, in fact. And these are the Resilience Awards. I was wondering if you could tell us, what resilience means to each one of you, and how you saw it in this film.
It's a good question. It's a hard one. But I think Jess is the embodiment of resilience. It's taking just about anything and surrounding yourselves with friends and family, and relying on them for their support and pushing through, keeping that positive mindset. That's ultimately what she wanted from this film, to everyone take things step by step, just tackle it head on and push through. It's tough. I know she has her moments of doubt, and she has losses, and Pedro has moments of doubt, but they still show up. And they show up for one another, and I think that's the most important part of resilience.
Yeah, I think with Jess, she never stayed down for long. Anytime she would have a setback, it was okay. They weren't losses, they were lessons. The way she framed things was really inspiring, and I think a lot about bravery with this film. And I think you can't be brave without being resilient. And I think I learned more about resilience and bravery from a kid than I've learned from any adult that I've ever met. And that was something that I think came through with her fighting spirit from the beginning. And I know it's like a cliche, but she really was a fighter. Like, she tackled everything head on. Whenever there was a problem, she would get frustrated, but then that's fine. And there's a moment in our film where she goes all the way to West Virginia and there's not any other girls for her to fight. And then she's bummed, but then she's like, I'm going to move up because Tegan's a bum and I'm going to like give her a loss. And I loved that. I loved that so much. And I think if we all were able to kind of reframe the things that happen, sure, you'd be disappointed, but you just pick yourself up and you move on with positivity and optimism. And that's what she was all about.
Yeah, I know she's talking about sending her message to all the little girls out there. I'm like, all the big girls too. Yeah. We can all learn from her. I have a lot more questions, but I want to see if anybody in the audience has anything they want to ask before I keep going.
I have a question. Like, so when she got sick, I feel like that probably was an opportunity for you guys to be like, should we sort of restructure the film? Like, so what was the like artistic kind of decision making through there? Because I feel like the movie still very much felt like the focus was on boxing, and then she got sick kind of right at the last bit. So, but obviously I'm sure there's lots of footage and interviews and stuff where you could have done the first 20 minutes of boxing in the last chunk covering that.
Yeah, so the questions about the structure of the film and how you had to change things when the story changed and how you made those decisions.
Yeah, so I don't know how familiar you are with the Up series, but it's a really famous documentary series where they follow people every 7 years, and that was kind of the model. I was really curious about what makes a champion. But every year, we had a series of questions that we asked, and it was everything from dating, which you saw like a hot second of, to school stuff, to what do you want to be when you grow up, to do you still love boxing, what else are you doing, etc. And the original vision for the film was we were going to tell this in a non-linear way where she would start almost like right before she goes out in the Olympics, and then we would jump back to training when she was 10 and kind of really use time as a way to explore somebody's life and this rich tapestry. And when she got sick and she told us kind of why she wanted to keep filming, obviously we had to think about our film and how to tell and honor kind of that message. And to me, this became less about boxing in some ways and more about the lessons of boxing and the father-daughter love story that you see, because this is a story, I think, about, like, it is about resilience, but it's also about the love of a parent and a child. And so those questions about them and their relationship, I think, came a little bit more front and center versus just boxing. And of course, boxing is the vehicle, but boxing was also something that brought them together, that taught them a lot of lessons, taught them how to deal with losses, taught them kind of how to roll with the punches, pun intended. So that was, I think that was, and it also made sense. We did not want to start with her sick. But we have our interview with Pedro where he sort of alludes that something will happen, just because we were worried that it's still it's so hard to have her get sick, but that is what happened. We just didn't want it to be so shocking.
With Pedro?
I mean, I think I have a hard time answering that just because he's grieving. And I think grief looks different for everybody. I think when I talk to him, he manages to send me like positive. I mean, he's still Pedro. He says he's good, and he knows that she's home and she's in a better place. And I think their faith comes through a bit in the film, but obviously he's a believer, and I think his faith has been very, very helpful during this time. But it's grief. It's not easy.
Well, I'm thinking about the people who are going to watch this film, and I have ideas of all the people I think can be inspired. Do you have any people that you're bringing this film to, places that people that you really think should see this film?
I was just going to say, I think for us, I'd love to get this in schools. We've done education screenings, and it's always amazing. I think people think that kids can't handle topics around illness and death, and I don't think that's true. People, as kids, you lose grandparents, parents get sick, you lose a sibling. I think it's really important to give kids a safe space to talk about this stuff and talk about their feelings. And then I obviously think from an impact campaign standpoint, we would love to see more brain cancer research funding. We want to make sure that the message and her goal happens, that we can raise money and awareness, because it is underfunded and it affects children a lot of times. So I think those have been our two biggest goals.
Yeah, those are definitely our two biggest. I'd say the only other thing we're targeting is like parent groups. You know, we know that like Pedro, for example, when Jess got sick, was part of a counseling group, and it's parents talking about their kids getting cancer diagnosis. I think this film could help some of those groups just open up and see kind of what the experience is like. Granted, you know, we didn't film a ton during that time, but it's still, I think, important to not just focus on the cancer, but the lead up to the cancer and like the relationship that was so strong and continued to be strong all the way up until the end.
I have more questions, but I don't want to monopolize. Albie?
Yeah. You captured such joy from her and passion about, how did you establish that relationship? I mean, she seems very open, but I know it's working with kids. There's a measure of trust in this, and you did a remarkable job, both for her and him, which must have been hard as well. Did you not shoot for 5 years and then just roll camera?
And the question is about building the relationship and trust in the film.
Well, first of all, Jess made it easy, because she is just like a shining star from the second you meet her. But I think that there were things that we made very clear. This was my first film working with a kid. So I wanted to make sure her parent was present the entire time. I wanted to, especially at the beginning, and I wanted to make sure that she knew that she was part of the process, that if there was something she didn't want to answer, she didn't have to, that if she needed to take a break, she could, that if she had something she wanted to say that we didn't ask, she could tell us. And that was something we established from the beginning, and we checked in every single year to make sure she still wanted to do this, that this was never something, we always wanted it to be something that was fun for both her and her dad, even though he would be like, I'd hate filming. But, you know, we had a good time. And as the years went on, I mean, we became friends. Like, I care about these people a lot. And I think that if we didn't have a close relationship, I'll say this. I talked to the director of the Up series, and he said that he comes every 7 years, asks some questions, and leaves. That's it. And I remember telling Pedro at the very beginning that, like, you know, like a lot of filmmakers, like, they kind of keep their subjects at like arm's length and blah, blah, blah. And like, that didn't happen with us. Like, we became friends. And I think with that, there was a trust. There were topics that before we talked about, like, I made sure, like, is this okay to ask? Is this not okay to ask? And I think that was really, you know, kind of how it evolved. At the beginning, maybe some of the questions were a little bit more superficial, more around boxing, and then as we got to know them and got to know their lives, they felt comfortable talking about other things.
It's kind of easy to make friends when you're in like Shreveport, Louisiana, and you're driving around for 2 hours and we just talk to them, you know. We just became really good friends with them, and like we would tease each other. I know like Jess challenged me, said I couldn't run a 7-minute mile, and then like we ran, you know, like there's just things that.
How'd you do?
I did not run a 7-minute mile. She was right. No, but, you know, we just became friends, and I think in natural conversation, we got to know them, and so we knew what to ask, and we knew what was happening in their lives because we saw it firsthand.
Did they see any of the footage before the final film, or along the way, or did you just wait to show them the film?
Yeah, we showed them clips, and then more importantly, we showed them the final film. And they actually did have feedback, and we changed it based on, you know, there's a relationship that we portrayed a certain way, and they felt that was unfair to that person. So we decided to change it a little bit, honor their wishes, and yeah, so they were active participants, not just in the film, but as filmmakers.
Thank you.
Do you have any resources that our audience can follow up with? There were some websites in the end of the film.
We've been updating. So I think what we want to do now is, I talked about it with Pedro, And I sent him what we have, and it's an epilogue that kind of honors the fight that she had, because you see in the, where we leave off in the film was where kind of we finish, but now with her passing, I think it's really important to note that, she was given less than a year and she fought for 3, and she made so many memories with her family, and she won. And he even says this thing that, her fight at the 2024 Olympics wasn't what we expected, but she still won because she passed very soon after the finish of the Olympics. And we want to make sure that we acknowledge that in the film, and then also have a place where people can donate. So we've been talking about doing outreach to a few places. So
yeah, I mean, we recommend Cure Childhood Cancer. I think they're a great organization. They focus on DIPG as well, so and childhood brain cancer. So that's definitely one resource. Yeah, I think they're still raising funds for their funeral costs as well, which you can find on our Instagram. So if you go to our Instagram, JessZilla the film, you can find more information there.
I also just wanted to ask what projects you're working on next, and if you could share a little bit more. We saw in this film the intimate storytelling that you were able to achieve, and what a powerful story. What do you have coming up that we can look forward to next?
we have something very different. It's called Puzzle People, and it is about speed jigsaw puzzler competitors. They do competitions, and also how our brains are wired. So very different. And we actually have a youth idea that we have been talking about, but I can't, since we haven't made the whole connection and everything, I can't. We're at the very beginning stages, so I can't talk about it.
Oh, yeah, we have another question.
So a lot of individuals that wanted to come and see this film today, they couldn't come. But if I wanted to share it and have them, watch this amazing film, where would they be able to?
Yeah, so you can still watch the film online through Shine Global through the end of this week, and then after that.
So you want to answer it? You're better at this.
Yeah, so we're still working on our distribution plan. We have a contract in the works, and I wish I had a link to send you right this moment, but legal contracts with distribution take a while. So we'll update our Instagram. I would say reach out to us there, and we'll send you either where we're playing, or we'll give you information on when we'll be in theaters and or on VOD, like video on demand.
I don't think I'm allowed to share this, but we also have an upcoming screening in the Bronx. And I believe it may be free too, which is great. So that's another one. But like Ben said, it's just me on the Instagram. I'm terrible at Instagram. So I try my best to keep it updated, but we should have, at least by early 2025, we should be on sort of the regular streaming sites.
Yes, and as you can tell, independent filmmaking can be very difficult to get these films out. So at Shine Global, we know that from our own films, and we're so happy to be able to support filmmakers that are making important stories like this through doing this screening series, through our Resilience Awards. I want to let everyone know we have a wonderful partnership with The Hollywood Reporter. So there's been advertisements about this film, and we've been getting this film out to people in Hollywood. So we appreciate all of your support in helping us to make sure that the stories of kids like this are getting told and seen, and that they're inspiring audiences. Just remember that you can vote, for as part of the audience gets to be the 5th juror in choosing the final grand prize winner. So however you got your tickets, you should have gotten an email or a text or something about how to vote after this screening. And thank you all so much for being a part of this. And thank you, Emily, thank you, Ben, and thank you to the Silva family for sharing their story in this beautiful film. Thank you.